everyone, Digital David here. Today in this video, I'm going to be checking out the Laresar Robot Vacuum Cleaner, specifically the Mars01 model. I did receive this product directly from Laresar, but any opinion expressed in this video is strictly my own. That being said, if you're interested in this RoboVac or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. Let's take a look at the retail box and packaging. On the side, we got a QR code. On the back, we have additional product tech specs here. 5,000 PA suction, 3-in-1 design. It sweeps, vacuums, and mops. We have our flexible, slim body. We have automatic carpet boost, smart app controls, and long-lasting battery life up to 180 minutes. We have our specs right here on the other side. Now let's go ahead, let's open it up and see what's inside. Here are all the contents. First up, we have our product literature with our user guide and manual. This has 5 different languages supported. Very detailed and thorough with charts and diagrams and all the setup instruction and information you would need, complete with their customer service and contact info as well as warranty. There's their customer service info right there. This comes with a 1-year warranty. We have that information. We have a helpful troubleshooting section with common problems. And then we have our product specs right here if you're interested to learn more about it. We do have a 3,000 milliamp hour battery capacity. Next, we have 2 side cleaning brushes, multi-purpose detangling tool and cleaning brush. We have our power supply right here with barrel connector. See the specs on the power supply right there. We have our mopping pad and module. We have our charger and home base. There's our charging contacts. Here's a side look. Back side with some cable management and storage. Here's the plug side right there. Then here's a look at it from the bottom. Lastly, we have the vacuum. Let's go ahead, let's look at that in more detail. Front and center of the vacuum, you'll notice their logo and branding, the LIDAR navigation module, and we have 2 control buttons with an indicator light right at the top. Let's look at it from the side now. We have our navigational bumper, some sensors in the front of the bumper. Here's a look at the side with some additional venting. The back side has our dustbin that we can pop out like so. It just slides right out. Here's a look inside with it removed. Looking at the dustbin, we have our filter right here that we can easily clean and replace as needed. And that just pulls right out and that shuts. We can manually empty the dustbin right there, dump everything out, wash and clean as needed. And then we can fill up our water tank right here for mopping. We'll look at it from all different sides and angles, and then that just slides right back in on the vacuum. Now we'll flip it over, we'll look at the very bottom. Here's a look at the dustbin. Here's the main brush roller with bristles. We can press this in, pop it out, and we can remove, detangle, and clean as needed. Battery compartment clearly labeled, additional product info, spring-loaded drive wheels, multiple sensors all throughout, charging contacts, omnidirectional wheel, and this is where our brush is going to be installed. So let's go ahead and get this set up. Just line up the square with the square for the side cleaning brush and snap in place. There we go. That has successfully been installed. We can also attach the mopping pad and module here. So just line everything up and gently press in place like so. And then when we're done mopping, we can always remove that as well just by gently pulling it away. This is just Velcroed on there, so if you want to wash and clean the microfiber mop pad, you can do that as well. Now it's time to clean.
Start mopping.
our first cleans out of the way, let's look at some real world results. So I haven't washed, cleaned, or emptied anything yet. Here's our mop pad, and there is slight discoloration all throughout, especially in the center here. That's actual dirt from around our house and floor. Just make sure to wash this regularly to keep it in tip-top shape. But so far so good, you can see the results right there. And on the vacuum itself, let's go ahead, let's pop open the dustbin here. Being careful not to spill out the contents, but it's fairly full, which is exciting. So let's open that up right here, and ta-da, look at that. Tons of pet hair, dirt, dust, crumbs, things from outside. Let's try to, oh, look at that, gross. Grass clippings, a ton of stuff down there. So I did notice our dustbin's actually wet. That's because when I filled this up, it overflowed and it leaked in there, and I didn't know that. So don't do that. Learn from our mistake. But you can see all the contents in there. Larger items, I got some grass clippings there, some leaves, pet hair, crumbs, and then that really fine dirt and dust. It's disgusting seeing it a little bit wet. But look at the fine dirt and dust that you get from this vacuum as well right there. So all different sizes, and this is what you can expect around your house in a real world environment. And now we'll flip the vacuum over to see the main brush roller in the side cleaning brush. Every once in a while, you may or may not find some hairs wrapped around the side cleaning brush, so keep an eye on that. And here's a look at our main brush roller. So what's nice about the bristle design is it's great at picking up hair, but the bad news is it's great at collecting hair as well too. Very, very common for models like this. Nothing out of the ordinary. You just have to make sure that you're using the tool to detangle this after every couple of cleans, so it's not going to affect the performance. You want to get all those hairs removed. But everything as you would expect with this style of brush roller. Easy to detangle and clean as needed, and you can just pop it right back in place on your vacuum like so. Now let's take a look at the Laresmart app available for iOS and Android devices. Here's our Mars01 set up. We can enter into it here. It's going to populate the map that it made for us. We'll go over some of the key settings that you need to know about. First one is with the map here, you are able to configure it. So we can set no-go zones, so areas where you don't want it to mop or we don't want it to mop and clean. You can do both of that right there. There's also virtual walls that you can add. Everything's drag and drop. It can be done within the app right there. Then we can go back out. We have some key settings down at the bottom. Smart cleaning mode, pin and go. We can select a room to clean, zone clean. We can send it back home to recharge. So a lot that can be accomplished there. You also might notice we have different settings depending on the room, so you can configure it that way as well too. We can view more settings by hitting the three dots for the settings, where we have our manual drive option. We can manage our rooms right here. There are multiple maps that are supported, so you can view all those maps right there. We can locate our vacuum. We have a timer option, so you can basically set a schedule, choose which days of the week you want it to repeat, suction settings, water level, all of that. Here's our suction settings right here, multiple options to choose from. Water level, we can adjust that from low, medium to high. Resume cleaning, we can toggle on or off. Customize mode, voice and volume settings. Here's our cleaning history. You can view all that right here. So take a look at the full clean. Got a nice detailed map letting us know the time, the area, the path that it took. Look at that row by row cleaning. That's what LIDAR navigation is going to give you. A nice accurate map and a nice clean area that's guaranteeing coverage because it actually knows where it is. Then we have our consumables management right here. This lets us know the remaining life on our filters, brushes, things like that. Do not disturb mode, cleaning mode options. What do you want? You can customize those right there. View our device info. And then we have our mop state and our working mode. So that's smart enough to identify when we put the mop on that it's installed. And currently we're just in sweep, but you can set mop, sweep and mop, or just sweep. So a simple app that's easy to customize and get access to exactly what you need. Now let's talk about performance. How does the Mars01 stack up against the competition? We'll be looking at some key metrics and tech specs to get a better feel for the value of this vacuum and how it performs to the over 50 plus robot vacs we've personally tested and reviewed. First up, we're looking at max suction power measured in PAs. The higher the better. Usually that means you're going to see better performance in the real world. So we have 5,000 PAs. That's a lot for this particular vacuum, and you'll learn more later why that's a little bit shocking to me given how aggressive this vacuum is priced. So with that being said, 5,000 PAs, that's actually about 600 PAs above the typical average that you would see. Next, max CFM. This one was interesting because we're spot on with the average, 6.9 CFM for this vacuum compared to the competition, which also averages 6.9. Now we're gonna look at our deep cleaning score. This is where we embed coffee on carpet and we vacuum it up. We measure the before and after results. So we got a score of 75 out of 100. That's 10 points less than the average RoboVac out there that gets a score of 85. So since we have basically the same suction power and CFM, that leads me to believe that the cleaning system on this vacuum is just a little bit less efficient compared to the average, whether that's the roller brush design, how it seals on surfaces, things along those lines. Next, let's talk about decibels. This peaks at 75 decibels. The average is going to be 70. The higher this value, the louder your vacuum is going to be. I would say though, when you have this cleaning next to your typical RoboVac or another RoboVac in the room, you'd be hard pressed to find any sort of noticeable difference. It's once we start to peak up around that 80 decibel mark, so about 10 decibels more than the average, then that's when you start to say, wow, that vacuum's really loud. 70 to 75, you will hear the vacuum, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be any louder than your typical vacuum, if that makes any sense. Now let's talk about battery life. This is measured in minutes. We have 180-minute runtime with this vacuum compared to the competition, which has a 150-minute runtime. So you enjoy an extra 30 minutes with this vacuum. Now keep in mind your mileage will vary depending on suction settings and all of that good stuff that you can configure in the app. Next, let's talk about battery capacity. This is measured in milliamp hours. Typically, you find larger battery capacities on vacuums that have a longer runtime. In this case, we have a 3,000 milliamp hour battery compared to the competition, which usually has a 3,800 milliamp hour battery. Next, let's talk about height. This is measured in inches. This vacuum comes in right under 5 inches at 4.9 inches. That's very typical for your LIDAR equipped vacuums that have that sensor and module up at the top. Our average skews lower because we have a lot of models that don't have that sensor up top, whether it's a camera or it's absent altogether. So they tend to be a little bit shorter. Typically, shorter is better. I'd argue though, if you can still get LIDAR versus not, because you can get those hard to reach areas, but I'd much rather forego under a certain couch or piece of furniture to get a better navigational experience and map configuration abilities. Now let's talk about bin capacity measured in milliliters. This has a 250 milliliter dust bin. That's going to be on the lower side. A little bit shocking to me considering that typically you don't see capacities that low unless the unit also supports self-empty, but this is not a self-empty model. So our average is 420 milliliters. That's a mix of those with and without self-empty. But what you need to know is you'll be making more trips to empty the dustbin than your typical average RoboVac. Next, let's talk about water tank capacity measured in milliliters. We have a 250 milliliter water tank in this vacuum cleaner, which is great. That's 10 milliliters more than the average out there. But again, that average takes into account those that support the ability to refill their tanks automatically and those that don't. If it supports, auto refill, those tanks are going to be a lot smaller, similar to self-emptying. But what that means to you is less trips to refill. You should definitely be able to get 1 or 2 cleans on the highest water level with this before it's time to refill. Lastly, let's bring everything together and look at it through the lens of cost. So this is pretty substantial what you're getting feature set wise with this vacuum versus the competition. We had decent performance, especially when you consider this is a fraction of the price, but we didn't get a fraction of the performance, right? We were either neck and neck, a little bit above, a little bit below the average, but look at that difference in what you're going to be paying. Typically for a vacuum in this price bracket, you do not get LIDAR navigation. So that's a huge win. Sure, it doesn't have things like object avoidance, self-empty, all of that good stuff, but that costs a lot more. So really good value for what this vacuum is. Now, let me share with you my final thoughts in regards to this particular vacuum. We'll talk about some advantages and disadvantages. First, for the advantages, there's no denying the value. So looking at it through that budget conscious lens and comparing it to your other entry-level vacuums, this vacuum really offers a really tremendous value for what it is. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's things like having LIDAR navigation, and then having LIDAR navigation isn't the end-all be-all. It matters what sort of software we have, but we have advanced mapping for multi-level support. We have the ability to clean by room, zone, all of that good stuff. We can set virtual walls and barriers, no-go zones, all of that through the app with this vacuum. Also, I want to point out the mopping feature set that we get is top-notch for, again, where we are in the market for where this vacuum sits. Typically, if you even get a mopping module for a vacuum at this level, it's going to be a bring your own wipe sort of model where you just put a wipe on it and then it cleans, that sort of thing. We have a water tank, a mop pad, and we have the ability within the software to adjust the water level. Typically, if you're lucky to get all those things, you never have the software feature set to match it and adjust the level. Usually it's just a predetermined amount that's gravity fed. So really some great features snuck into this very aggressively priced vacuum. Now for some disadvantages. First thing I want to point out is I'm not going to dock this for not having object recognition, mop washing, cleaning, drying, self-empty, or any of those features, because that's not what you're paying for with this vacuum. Sure, I want to see them, and yes, technically that's a disadvantage, but for a lot of vacuums out there, that's going to be very common. Even for those, I'm going to want to see even more features on the high-end model. So with that being said, for this particular model, basically, most of the disadvantages come down to the main brush roller. If you have a lot of hairy humans or pets in your house, that will get tangled up frequently, so you will have to clean and maintain that after every couple of cleans. Make sure you're turning it over and cutting everything loose. Other than that, with that system on the bottom, typically they have self-leveling options, so if you have uneven floors or surfaces, that'll help get you a deeper and better clean. That's not the case with this vacuum, and I wish they would have included that so we could get that deeper and thorough clean, especially on carpets. And then lastly, I'm trying to think of an example to put this into words, but I could just tell that this vacuum needs a little bit more attention and care as it's cleaning around your house than your typical LIDAR vac. It just might encounter more situations where it's confused or gets stuck than your other LIDAR equipped vacuums.